boys and girls. Today we are going to talk about multiplication as a comparison. Please pause the video and write this down at the top of your notebook page. We are going to be comparing numbers using multiplication to help us. Let's start with these stars. We are starting with 3 stars. You can write down the word 3 stars, or you can draw 3 little stars. And next to it, just as I would like you to write down 3 times as many. So let's think about that. If we start with 3 stars, and then we do this 3 times, how many stars will that be? You know the answer. You can pause the video and write it down. 3 times as many would be 9 stars. And if I'm going to write a sentence for this, it would be 3 times 3. Because I'm starting with 3, and then I know I'm using multiplication because it says the word times, and my second number is also a 3. And 3 times 3 equals 9. And if you see my picture with my 3 rows of stars, I do have 9 stars. Let's try another one. Let's say I start with 8 stars, and then I have 2 times as many. Let's put this in our notebook as well. Sometimes you might see 2 times, and sometimes you might see the word twice. Twice is the same as 2 times as many. You don't want to get tricked by that. So if I start with 8 stars and I do twice as many, that means I'm going to have another box the same with the same number of stars in it. Again, if you want to pause the video and show me in your notebook what you do, you can also try to write the multiplication sentence for this. Hopefully you realize that twice as many stars would be 16. And my multiplication sentence is 8 times 2, which equals 16. Let's try some word problems. Miss Curdy ran 3 miles over the weekend. I'm going to underline 3 miles. Mrs. Taylor ran 3 times as many miles as Miss Curdy over the weekend. I'm going to underline 3 times as many. And this is like what we were just doing with the stars. If I start with 3, and over here I do 3 times as many, I know that Mrs. Taylor ran more. And that's also something to think about when you're solving these problems. So if Miss Curdy ran 3, and Mrs. Taylor ran 3 times, I know that my equation, like the stars, will be 3 times 3. So how many miles did Mrs. Taylor run? She ran 9 miles. Go, Mrs. Taylor. Okay, let's try another one. Might be a little bit trickier. The following weekend, Mrs. Taylor ran 12 miles. This is twice as many as Miss Thode ran. Now here is why this problem is trickier. Because this sentence tells me that Mrs. Taylor ran more miles. Because it says this is twice as many. So what I need to think about, I know twice means 2. I now need to think 2 times what equals 12. Because that sentence, this is twice as many as Miss Thode, if I think to myself Mrs. Taylor ran more, I know that Miss Thode ran less. And if Miss Thode ran less, I can't do 12 times 2, because that would mean that Miss Thode ran 24. But we know Mrs. Taylor ran more. So once I have this equation, I have to think to myself, what would my question mark equal? And if you know your multiplication box, you know that my question mark would be 6 miles. Let's double check that. It's always important to double check a word problem to make sure it makes sense. So the following weekend, Mrs. Taylor ran 12 miles. This is twice as many as Miss Thode ran. Miss Thode ran 6 miles. 6 miles times 2 equals 12, and that is what Mrs. Taylor ran. So that does make sense. Let's try a third word problem. Mrs. Riley read 16 books over the summer. This is 4 times as many as Mrs. Klotz. How many books did Mrs. Klotz read? Again, this is one of those tricky ones where it says this is 4 times as many. So I know that Mrs. Riley read 16 books, but I know she read more than Mrs. Klotz because the words are this is 4 times as many. So again, I'm going to do a multiplication sentence, and I want you to write this down. 4 times, instead of doing a question mark, let's use something called a variable. We're going to put a letter here, and our letter represents a number. You're going to start to see these more and more this year. So 4 times, we're going to use the letter B for books, equals 16. Can you write that down? Now, let's think about our multiplication facts, or you can even think about division. 16 divided by 4, or 4 times what equals 16. And I know that my B is going to equal 4 books. So again, let's make sure this makes sense. Mrs. Riley read 16 books. This is 4 times as many as Mrs. Klotz. And we know if Mrs. Klotz read 4, and Mrs. Riley read 16, 4 groups of 4 equals 16, so that makes sense. We can always go back to our bar diagrams to help us with these. Mr. Joe ate 2 pieces of pizza. Mr. Jimmy ate twice as many pieces as Mr. Joe. How many pieces of pizza did Mr. Jimmy eat? Okay, well, if Mr. Jimmy ate twice as many, Mr. Jimmy ate more. So I know that I'm going to use my multiplication sentence again. So if Mr. Joe ate 2, and Mr. Jimmy ate twice as many, think about what number twice means. Okay, it means 2. I'm going to do 2 times 2. And I know, easy multiplication, it means that he ate 4 pieces of pizza. And does that make sense? Mr. Joe ate 2, and Mr. Jimmy ate 2 times that. So yes, that does make sense, 4 pieces. Let's try one more problem. Let's try this on your own. I'm going to read it to you, and then you can pause the video and try to solve it. Mrs. Lopez was on vacation for 4 days this summer. Mrs. Pirith was on vacation 3 times as many days as Mrs. Lopez. Sorry about that. How many days was the Pirith family on vacation? Oh my goodness. I have to check my punctuation. Okay, so you can pause the video and solve this, and then play the video to see if we get the same answer. Okay, so I know Mrs. Lopez was on vacation for 4 days. Mrs. Pirith was on vacation 3 times as many. So I know I'm going to multiply that 3 times. So 4 times 3 equals, and I know I need to put days because that's the number I'm talking about. So the Pirith family was on vacation for 12 days this summer. You think you're ready to work on some work independently? You can get started with that. If you want a little more practice with your teacher, ask them for some help. Great job.